Well, good morning, all. As we stare down the barrel of our first few weeks here and you have to start writing book reviews, I thought I might go a little bit more in depth into what exactly I'm expecting and what a good professional historical book review looks like. So, first, some of this is going to be review from what we covered earlier, but I figure that can't hurt. So I hope you'll bear with me as we proceed. Now, beginning. The difference between a standard essay and a book review. Remember that a standard essay tells the story of history. It actually sits down and tries to reconstruct what happened word for word, action for action. On the other hand, a book review analyzes and critiques someone else's storytelling. So in our case, you might, if you were writing a standard essay about, say, Paul's missionary journeys, try to go back and use multiple primary and secondary sources to reconstruct the story of what Paul did on a particular missionary journey. And so there, the focus is on Paul, the focus is on what he's doing. In the case of a book review, what you're doing is you are reviewing and analyzing, critiquing someone else who has written something about Paul. So instead of spending your entire time saying, Paul went here and did this, and Paul went here and did that, what you're going to do is you're going to give a brief summary of this person's view of Paul, and then you're going to talk about this is how this person did this book. This is where they succeeded. This is where they failed. They were convincing. Were they not convincing? So on and so forth. Now, of course, there's going to be some overlap between the two, but by and large, that's going to be your focus. And again, there is a difference between what we call a book report and a book review. A book report just repeats what the book says. It's all summary. And the purpose of assigning a book report is, in theory, to tell that you read it. They want to see that you are able to spit back out the basic information that was in the book. Okay, you read it, in theory, because we all know there are 1,000 ways to fake that. A book review does summarize a book, but less than a third of the book review is going to be pure summary. It takes it a step farther. It analyzes it and it critiques it. So what was the author's use of evidence? Was the prose style effective? Were the arguments convincing? Did I come across any blatantly biased interpretations that affect the central thesis? So those are the kinds of questions that you're going to be asking about a book review. And no book review is ever going to be complete without substantial analysis. That's the review part. And I should also emphasize that the analysis should stand on its own. You don't want it to be stuck in the conclusion as an afterthought. I get a lot of those, where people basically write a 6-page book report, and in the last paragraph they go, oh, and it's an okay book. No, you don't want that. You want the analysis to be its own standalone, substantial section, and then have a separate conclusion that draws everything together. And this is a good representation of what a basic book review might look like. You open the review with the book title and complete publication information. The more the better, because you want your reader to be able to go out and grab the book and read it if they so desire. Then you'll give your own name, the author of the review, and then you'll give your own title. And this is, of course, your title, not the book's title. So what do you want us to get out of your review? Next comes the hook. You're going to grab our attention. You're going to give us a reason for wanting to read this review. You'll give the book's author's information. Who is this person? What perspective are they coming from? Why are they writing this book? What are their qualifications? At this point, you need to summarize the book's thesis in a sentence, 2 at most, and then give us some kind of indication of what your evaluation is. Now, you don't have to go so far as to say, I think blah, 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 blah. It can be something very simple, like, the author does an excellent job of arguing this thesis, or the author struggles to execute this thesis. And of course, in that moment, we've got an idea of where you're going with this and how we should interpret the rest of your review. The next section that comes up is historiographical placement and summary of evidence. This is where you're basically summarizing the content of the book and you're giving us an idea of where it fits in the overall historiographical picture. After that, I would include a paragraph of analysis. Now, you can do it like I did it here, where you break it out into negative analysis in one paragraph and positive analysis in another, or you can put it all into one paragraph. Whatever you prefer is best. I personally like dealing with the negatives first and then moving on to the positives because, to be perfectly honest, the historical world is kind of a small place. And you never know, as you go farther, who may not be reading your book or your article later on. So if you come out with a horribly negative review, and eventually this review gets published or somehow ends up into the author's hands, and you never know, then you might actually make some enemies. So it's best, yes, put some negative stuff in there. Make sure that you actually deal clearly and strongly with the negatives of the book. And there are always going to be some negatives. If no other reason, then I personally find if I read a review that says nothing but wonderful things and how great this book is, I tend to not believe it, because every book is written by a human, and every human is going to have some failings of some kinds. So give us the negative, give us the positive. I prefer, like I said, end on the positive. Try to make it sound like you respect the person that you're reading, even if you disagree with them strongly. And then finally, give us a substantial conclusion. And I say substantial, of course, I ran out of space on this example, and so there's only a line or two here. But you want the conclusion to stand apart from the analysis. You want it to collect all of those threads. You want them to pull it together and to be able to drive your central point home. This is the author's thesis. This is whether the author succeeds or fails. This is a good book. This is a bad book. This is a mediocre book. What's your recommendation? What's your conclusion? So I hope this helps you understand the process of a book review a little bit better. If you have any further questions, again, please don't hesitate to let me know.